first two are pretty self-explanatory on the expenditures. The other one is really just the contract for the engineering services. If you recall, a few weeks ago, we had Prina Newhoff in here, and kind of they summarized their proposal for the Walker Avenue Bridge. So this is more the formal contract for them, specifically for that project. So it's been reviewed by our attorneys and their attorneys. Everybody's satisfied and meets all the requirements and basically following the proposal that they submitted. So we would just look for your consideration to approve that as part of the consent agenda. They are well on their way on some of the background information and survey work on the project, so things are moving along. Nothing more to share at this point. Still, as I said, in investigating mode on some of the data gathering phase.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions on the bridge project? Okay. All right. Next on our list, I think from the consent, any questions on the, I think expenditures are what we are, Daryl had just mentioned, so we're good there. Should we jump into any discussion around the ordinances and any of the readings tonight? Want to do that now? Get ahead of it, or?
Sounds good. Yeah, there may be public during the public hearing at 7, but if you want, we can get some background on this one because there is a protest petition that's been filed by the neighbors too. So maybe it's a good idea to take some time, have Dan Power come on up and talk about that process and fill in the blanks a little bit for you so you know what, if you hear any public comment at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. I think I'll stand here unless you'd like me to run up to the podium and point anything out on the plans. I think you all have the digital plans in front of you. Your supplemental packet has the originally submitted and conditionally approved plan for this project and a recently revised version of that. So just let me know if there are any questions on the plan itself. But I am here to talk briefly about what you are reviewing in relation to that plan. There's a proposal for the lot at 1146 4 Mile Road Northwest, a basically undeveloped lot, zoned ORP, Office Research and Parking, proposed to be rezoned for the purpose of having 2 6-unit apartment buildings under a zoning category called RPUD 2, which is High Density Residential Plan Unit Development. To put this into a master planning context, the site is master planned a certain way, and then the zoning ordinance overlays on top of the master plan so that you have the master plan identifies what we're trying to trend towards, what we want to see on that site. The zoning is the law, so the zoning that we seek to approve and gear towards should be consistent with the master plan to make sure that our laws and what actually gets built on the ground reflect the kind of development that we want to see. So the master planning for the site calls for something called medium density residential. And in Walker we have shades of residential. We have low density, medium density, and high density. And medium density allows for up to 8 units per acre. And high density, I believe, allows up to 12 with some expansion ability if you have a PUD project, which is flexible zoning. So I'm saying that to frame up the conversation tonight about the specific project that's proposed on this site. It was proposed with 12 units on a 1.6 acre property, 1.6, 1.7. So what that means is that this density gets close to that limit of 8 units per acre that's permitted under that's kind of assigned under medium density residential as a future land use category. So within that context, the developer proposed this project in a site layout to try to get what they could on the site for that density. There's a plan with was 26, now 24 parking spaces. The building footprint is sort of has a sort of conventional residential facade. It's got some architectural treatments on it to kind of cohere with typical single-family home. But they are 2 buildings with 12 apartment units. And So that's kind of the background of the project. We don't get too deep into the details of the layout at this stage. The details come, if this were to be approved, it would come in the form of a final area site plan later as a second step of review by the Planning Commission. But what you're considering tonight is this PUD rezoning, which always goes with this preliminary site plan. It's sort of a contract zoning that is associated with a specific site plan. And so this site plan locks in that density at no more than what they propose at roughly 8 units per acre. The layout is potentially liable to be shifted a little bit if it gets approved, but it's basically what you'll see, and then the details come later. So it's on the basis of that plan that the City Commission is asked to either approve or table or deny the rezoning petition. There has been a good discussion with the Planning Commission. In my opinion, the Planning Commission did their job of working through the technical details of the zoning ordinance, making sure the procedural requirements of a preliminary area site plan were provided. And I think that they looked at kind of benchmark issues of traffic generation, density, the layout of the site, the dimensions of the site at kind of a high level of detail. That being said, there were some major points of concern. You had some significant concern from the neighbors about various issues, the preservation of natural features on the site, the generation of traffic, kind of the edge impacts and the proximity of the site to neighboring single-family residential properties and neighboring condominiums. And those concerns partially were addressed by the Planning Commission taking a closer look at the parking layout issue. So one of the things I've actually worked with the applicants since they got their recommendation from the Planning Commission to tweak their parking layout a little bit, to move their parking away from the 4 Mile and Cordis / English Hills Drive intersection, so that there is not as much parking in the line of vision right at that intersection, and that the headlights are sort of backed away from some of the neighboring properties across the street. So that's a change in the direction that the Planning Commission was looking for, but there are still lingering issues, some points of the project where we would expect to get some more information during a final area site plan review, but there's still nonetheless some big questions that remain unanswered regarding the preservation of open space, the proximity of this site to the adjacent lots, things of that nature. So I think the Planning Commission carried this through to a conditional recommendation for approval with the preliminary area site plan, a recommendation for rezoning with some points of concern left over. And then you saw some of those points of concern reflected in some of the comments from neighbors on a rezoning petition. I can speak to the legislative side of the rezoning petition. The Michigan Zoning Enabling Act says that based on a certain threshold of neighboring property owners signing within 100 feet, it's the owners of land within 100 feet of the rezoning site. If more than 20% of those landowners sign this petition, then there's a certain threshold of votes that need to be met. So it goes from a simple majority to a 2/3 majority. But regardless, we have checked the rezoning petition and assessed the signatures. The clerk's office primarily has taken the lead on that. We just got that on Friday, so we've been trying to catch up. And that is just another layer of the process that will apply to this decision tonight. So, any questions? I was kind of bouncing around there, but I think I got to the process and the basic issues of the plan. I'm glad to answer any other questions. And I know the applicants are here, and they sent an addendum to their previous submittal. If you look at your agenda pages there's a supplemental set of information, including the rezoning petition, or protest petition against rezoning, an explanation of that, and a couple of supplemental items from the applicants that they sent in, including a revised architectural drawing and kind of a response to the concerns in the rezoning petition. So I encourage you to look at all that information. The applicants are here if you want to ask anything from them, but again, I'm glad to answer any other questions about the site.
Commissioners, the floor is yours.
Can you repeat what you said about the 20% of the within 100 feet?
Yeah, it's written in a bit of a confusing way in the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, but I'm going to read it verbatim so that I'm not messing it up. If the owners of at least 20% of the area of land included within an area extending outward 100 feet from any point of the boundary of the land included in the proposed change, sign this petition, then there's a threshold where 2/3 of the city commissioners' votes have to be secured to pass the rezoning. And with a condominium, it can be even a little bit more confusing, but we interpret that there's one condominium parcel to the south where there's 28 property owners, so we factored those owners in as applying to the entire parcel, so they needed to factor into the calculation. If we didn't get a certain percentage of those owners, plus the owners of other adjacent regular parcels adjacent to the site, that's what we needed to validate the petition.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you clarify which pages in all of this are the final what is it, the final
Yeah.
first draft? What is it, the PASP?
Sure. We call it a PASP
Thank
for
you,
short.
yes.
It's preliminary area site plan.
Preliminary, that's what I was looking
So
for.
there's a conditionally approved one by the planning commission. That's what we're defaulting to for now. I have asked the developer to work toward a revision to that addresses some of the concerns about parking. But if you look in your packet, what the planning commission conditionally approved is what I'm calling staff exhibit A. It's on page 7. And the in progress sheet, if you want to call it that, is sort of pages 18 and 19, staff exhibit C.
Thanks.
Sure.
And if I can make one quick point just for Carol and others who might not be familiar with the process, if it were to be approved today, there would be another step in the review of the site for the planning commission at a final area site plan where some of the finer details would be refined and the full site layout would be finalized.
All right. Any other questions on this for now? Okay. I think we're good on our end. Anything else we should get ahead of before the 7 o'clock meeting or could get ahead of?
I'll be around. I think, I don't know if I have the information. I know there were a lot of questions about comparable densities, so I don't know if I went over that today, but there is some information that we had out for the Planning Commission on the density of sort of the English Ridge condos to the south, the English Hills condos. Those are somewhere between 3.5 and 5 units per acre. Old Orchard Apartments over by Alpine, closer to 20. So there's a wide range, but immediately adjacent to the site is where you might have some of your best context for what's being proposed.
And we're still going through validating the signatures of the details of the validity of them at this point.
Yeah, I would say that we're pretty confident. The clerk's office has worked with the assessing office to validate that the owners who signed are actually the owners of the condos, I believe. And then by virtue of the address numbers that were included, we know that the majority of the ones on the sort of the top of the list were English Ridge Drive and English Ridge Court. Those are certainly within that parcel that immediately abuts this site. And then I think they got most of the neighbors immediately adjacent on 4 Mile. Maybe not all of them, but I think we're at the point where we're pretty confident that there is the 20% threshold based on the signatures that we received.
Okay. All right. I think we have exhausted what discussion we can have right now on that then. Anything else? Maybe you want to go through the reports real quick?
Jumping up to the city manager's agenda there and talking about DPW. Sure. If you could entertain us for a second on that.
Go right ahead.
All right. Well, as all of you know, Mark Koning is in the audience, will be retiring by the end of this week. Obviously, that leaves a big hole at the head of the DPW department. So We're proposing that Gary Postma slide into that role as the new director of the DPW. Gary's been at Mark's side his whole run here at as the director and as the deputy director, so it's a perfect opportunity for Gary. And as you all know, our DPW is probably one of the finest in the area, if not the finest in the region. So I think carrying on that tradition with Gary at the helm will be an awesome addition to the city. So when it comes to the 7 o'clock meeting, I would certainly entertain or look for support of that appointment. And I know Gary and Mark might want to say a couple of words, and they can do that now while we have a few minutes if you'd like. And maybe when they're done with that, can give you a little update of what's been happening the last couple of weeks in their department, which has been fairly busy, as you all know. So
You're just itching to get out of that chair. Look at that. Yep.
All right, here we go. Well, Gary Postma, right? Been here 24 years in April. Started in '95, 6 years as an operator, and then came into management and when we had a few other retirements. Got the pleasure of working with Mark for 19 years as director, deputy director. Helped with budget, planning, purchasing, personnel, strategic long-term planning, month-to-month stuff, and getting the crews work. And got a great team back there. Plan on carrying on with that and carrying the tradition that's been here for a long time. So that's about all I got to say. So any questions or?
Commissioners, before I offer up my comments, any questions or comments from your end? For those that know Gary?
Well, I know that you'll do a great job. I've worked with you for many years when running the Walker Festival, and when Mark wasn't there, you were, and I think it's a natural step for you.
Thank you.
And congratulations and welcome to a new role.
Yeah,
You've got big shoes to fill.
that I do. I will never fill those shoes. I'll tell you that right now. That won't happen. So.
I'd just like to say that she took a lot of the words that I was going to say. You've been the right-hand man for a long time.
Yep.
Your qualifications are exemplary. We were proud of you as deputy, and now we'll be proud of you as the head of DPW as well.
Thank you.
So I'm glad that you stepped up to fill those shoes, and I have no question in my mind that you'll do it just fine.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. And we've had a lot of support from the commissioners in the past, the commission, so it's good.
Comments? All good? I think the part, we have Mark's retirement coffee and cake at 2 o'clock Thursday this week, but this is about Gary, but I'd be remiss if we didn't say, okay, 1982 is when Mark started with us, so it's been a long time, and you've had that opportunity to learn alongside him for a long time as well. And I think as we've seen this last week, the strength that we have in this department, and as Darrell said, it is the best run in the area, and it's not us saying it, we all believe it. So we know why the transition's taking place for the commission, how we got here. This is an example. We talk about succession planning and the importance of that in our departments. This is really the perfect definition of why we do it and how it works. So what's taking place is just a great example of the foresight and thinking. This is something that, Mark, you've been working on for some years now, and it's a logical move for us. So you have the full support of the commission, myself, and looking forward to those next steps. So,
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
all right.
Is it too early for me to ask if you can plow my driveway?
That would be a no.
Oh, okay.
So,
All right, good.
Good.
Good. Thank you, Gary.
yep.
Mark, did you want to mention anything?
Are you,
My love for the mic is always.
or are you saving it for Thursday?
I got pressed the button.
There you
go. I would say that Gary's been an integral part of the team. And, I think, the success of the Public Works Group is at times we're probably in spite of me. So, we've together have been able to, modernize the snowplow equipment and that fleet, and Gary was an intricate role in that. And it wasn't so much going around the equipment, it was more going around getting our team members to buy into, you know, how things were going to get done. So, yes, I fully support for Gary to take my position for sure. So, yeah, it's been a pleasure to have somebody as qualified as him to work side by side with as the management team. So, that's it.
Right, thank you.
This is my final time, I guess, probably.
Oh, no, you've got time on-
officially as
you've got time
DPW
on
director
Thursday,
to address the
yeah.
commission. So I just want to thank some of you I don't know so well, some of you I know very well, but it's been a real pleasure to serve the community underneath you folks, and we've always appreciated the support that has been given to us as we you know, took care of the business at hand, whether it was buying equipment or, you know, some new way of trying to figure out how to serve the community. So we appreciated that, and I appreciate everybody here. So thanks.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, all good from the manager's office?
Can I,
Yeah, go
do you
ahead.
want a break, or can I think I know the answer to this. But
Go right ahead.
if you don't mind, I'm just going to show a couple of slides quickly about 3 Mile and M11.
Okay.
We
Okay.
have about 5 or 6 minutes, so bear with me for 1 second here. A little bit of background, and the remote mouse is always a challenge, so bear with me for a second. There we go. Sarah, would you click on that, move it to presentation icon? So I think our battery croaked. And then I'll ask you to just go through the slides quickly. There we go. Okay, this is the northwest part of the city. The road that goes through the middle of that image is Remembrance Road, which in this case is M11, and then it transitions to Ironwood Drive once you hit the Ottawa County line. The intersections that I've highlighted from north to south, top to bottom, the first one is 3 Mile and M11. And we've talked about that intersection for quite some time. The intersection in the middle is the roundabout intersection, and the intersection to the south or bottom is Richmond and M11. We've been working with MDOT and Ottawa County Road Commission and the township to a lesser extent to plan these 3 intersections as a system. We know that 3 Mile has bad geometry. So we have an offer or a decision from MDOT on that intersection. I just want to go into that in a little bit more detail because MDOT and Scott Connors have both asked for your comments tonight. Okay, next slide. There we go. From the roundabout, north on M11 into Ironwood Drive where it becomes 5 lanes, they would like to take that 4-lane section and make it 3 lanes with a center turn lane. So essentially a road diet from the roundabout northwest. And then they would install a signal at 3 Mile and M11. That's the decision, okay? Sarah, if you'd hit the next one. So it would also require striping a 3-lane section on the Ottawa County side, which is to the left on the screen, and then Walker would have to widen and stripe on the right-hand side. Talked to Scott about that today. He says we're on board. We can do that as a local project. So those are the contingencies to get the signal. And we were asked to bring this to you folks tonight and see if you get a thumbs up or a thumbs down from you folks on the road diet to 3 lanes in that section and then the signal going in. That's it. So we're looking for feedback.
Okay. Got about 3.5 minutes. So commissioners, I'll ask as you look at this, let's come at this from a couple of different angles, and maybe I'll come right to left real quick. Commissioner Gilbert, I'll start with you in a minute, but I'll ask 2 things. One, what are the pluses you see out of this, and then are there any challenges that you see in the request that we have with the road diet in order to get the light in there?
So for clarification, the road diet would be on which section of this intersection?
From the roundabout northwest
Okay.
to the 5-lane section on what is then Ironwood.
Got it. Okay, so it would be
And then
cut
the
down
road
pretty,
would go back up.
so that'd be a pretty significant cut down on a pretty busy stretch of road, but
We looked at the traffic counts. The traffic counts will more than be supported by a three-lane section.
yeah, and I get that impression based on my knowledge of the area. It's just the traffic moves fast is where it feels like there's a lot coming through there. Generally, I want to say that I'm in favor of this, without much time to think it over, but the intersection I feel needs a light. That traffic moves fast with the awkward angle. When you're coming from 3 Mile over across Remembrance Road, it can be crazy trying to get across there, and people take it thinking they can get through, and I've seen some very close calls there. So I think that the benefits of adding the light outweigh any potential negatives with the road diet.
Thank you. Commissioner Glanville?
Yeah, with the apartments going in there at Johnson and Kennewa, I think increasingly a light is a necessity there. Also, when we look at that network between what you mentioned, 3 Mile, the roundabout, and then Richmond, with a light going in there, I think that gives the people back there in Cider Ridge and that neighborhood an alternate exit from that neighborhood, so they can maybe avoid that Richmond intersection a little bit more, especially our younger drivers as they're heading over to school. That would give them a route to get through with a little bit more safety. So yeah, I would say I'm not aware of any negatives, but I'm sure that there might be something that, upon closer inspection might be something to consider, but it seems like a good idea.
Thank you.
I agree with all the positives that Carol said. I think the one probably negative thing that we're going to be up against is the public perception of the road diet. And people thinking that coming down to 3 lanes is going to create a real backup or whatever, but I think they're going to find with the light it's going to flow better and it's going to be safer, and I think educating is a big part of that for the public.
Good, thank you. We've got about a minute I'll withhold mine until the end, but.
Okay, I was just going to say, I agree with Melanie also. When we did the road diet right out in front of City Hall, we had the same kind of residents concerned until after it was there and they started using it, and they gave us very positive feedback at that case. But anytime we have an available to get a signal in Walker, I think we should really look on the more positive side of doing it. I mean, we can use them, definitely. I'm in favor.
I think the signal weighs out all of the negatives that come along with this. I think perception is big, but as Sandra had mentioned, people just get used to driving with a road diet. We had that on Remembrance more towards Leonard way back years ago, and nobody seemed to be too upset about it once they got used to driving it. I just think that you guys had me at signal because we need a signal there.
Okay. All right. We'll get back into this after the start of the 7 then. That being said, Chief Howe's going to grab our folks and I'll open the meeting here in just a minute. All right. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I'll call the 7 o'clock meeting to order, and I would ask Commissioner Gruters to start us off with the invocation.
Would you join me?
Oh, there we go.
Join me in a moment of prayer. Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight with grateful hearts for your grace and protection over the last couple of weeks. Thank you for our public safety and city staff who work tirelessly through storms and power outages. Thank you for Mark Koning's many years of service and for his leadership, especially through these last couple of weeks. Thank you for the collaboration that we enjoy with both our staff and surrounding communities, and that we were able to offer shelter to some folks who were in need. We thank you for your continued protection of our dedicated staff who will continue their work under challenging conditions. Please keep them safe as they are out in our community. Guide our conversations this evening and give us understanding and grace as we make decisions and work together for all of our residents. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. If you'd all please join us, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If I could ask the clerk to please call a roll.
Mayor Carey,
Present.
Commissioner Gilbert,
Present.
Commissioner Blanco,
Present.
Commissioner Girders, present, Commissioner Howland,
Present.
and Commissioner DeShane.
Present.
And I would look for a motion to approve the absence of Commissioner Kent this evening.
I'll make that motion.
I'll support.
We have a motion from Commissioner DeShane, support from Commissioner Howland. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. I'll next ask for the approval of the minutes of January 14th, 2019 for the City Commission meeting.
Make a motion to approve?
Support.
Motion from Commissioner Gilbert, support from Commissioner Gruters. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed. And also look for an approval of the minutes of January 21st, 2019 from our work session.
I'll make that motion.
I'll support.
Commissioner Howland makes a motion to approve. Commissioner Glanville, support. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Now we'll open this up for public comment on any of the agenda items we have this evening. Going once, going twice. All right. Presentations, proclamations. Chief Long?
Hello?
Yes, the red button. There you go.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, thanks for this opportunity. City managers, thank you as well. As I said before many times, it's always a privilege and a pleasure to introduce new staff to our agency. And as you know, it's been a rarity over the many years, but recently we're starting to see a lot of turnover due to the retirements, and this is another example with Aaron joining us due to a retirement from a longstanding officer. But I want to take the opportunity to introduce you to Aaron this evening and administer his oath of office, empowering him as a Walker police officer. But a little background on Aaron. He came to our agency about 1 month ago, middle of December. And what we traditionally do is we place them into a field training process, and I think I've shared it before. Our field training process is 16 weeks of intensive one-on-one training, mentoring, and preparing our officers for solo patrol. So Aaron's just into step 3, just starting to step 3. Aaron comes to us with experience, which is always nice. He comes to us with some experience from the New Buffalo Police Department. But more importantly, he grew up in the Jenison area, and he still resides in the Jenison area and still committed to working down in New Buffalo full-time. So quite a commitment, dedication to a profession. So we really held that in high regards when we interviewed him and did a selection. Aaron's here this evening with his wife Jessie and his 2 daughters, Ellie and Branson. I'm going to give them an opportunity to be introduced by Aaron when we're done here, but the family support is always very important to us here at the agency, so I always like to highlight that. Aaron did complete his police training in the Grand Rapids Community College Police Academy and graduated in October of 17. So he does have some years of prior experience, but more importantly have some experience at the New Buffalo Police Department. But when we do the swearing-in ceremony, I always like to take the opportunity to speak directly to the officers' families, and any officers that are present for this ceremony. We talk about what the badge means and what it signifies. So we start talking about what this badge means. The symbolism of pinning the badge is going to remain as one of your biggest highlights as you progress through your career. This iconic symbol is deep-rooted in long-standing traditions, and it dates back to the medieval times. But the symbolism is much bigger than the act of receiving the badge. The badge is affixed to the outermost garment directly over your heart as a reminder that the public has entrusted you with the authority to act in their best interest, to promote your allegiance to the community, and as a protector of the peace. You must remember the issuance of this badge is an earned privilege when you accept the oath of office this evening, and by promising to protect and serve the community with honor, dignity, and respect for all people. When we speak of the honor, this represents your word as a bond in truth and what you're saying as your personal guarantee to carry it out. Walking the walk and not just talking the talk. Dignity is the personal principles you possess which frames your ethical foundation. The ethics you will follow both in your professional and personal life as you represent our agency and the law enforcement profession. Respect is the manner in which you will treat all people. Your character qualities which will distinguish you as an individual with the highest integrity values. You will be held accountable for your actions while interacting with our community. You will be expected to exercise an unbiased and impartial demeanor with all citizens. Remember to always stay humble and dedicated to serving in this noblest of professions. As equally as important as to what has been mentioned thus far is to always remember to honor and acknowledge the role of your family that they have played in getting you to this place in your career tonight. For it is your family which will remain your constant support, your motivator, and will keep you grounded as the husband, the father, and the provider that is expected and deserved. So you see, the badge is much more than a symbol of authority to be worn on the uniform. It should be viewed as a privilege and will be that constant reminder of your personal commitment to strive to serve with honor, integrity, character, and courage as a Walker police officer. So with those words being said, I would like to now swear you in under the oath of office as a Walker police officer. If you'd raise your right hand for me. As a Walker police officer, you are to act as an official representative of our city and you are required and trusted to work within the law. Your powers and duties as a police officer are conferred upon you by the state of Michigan by statute. Your fundamental duties as an officer include serving the community, safeguarding lives and property, protecting the innocent, keeping the peace, and ensuring the rights of all to liberty, equality, and justice. Our expectations are that you shall perform all of your duties impartially, without favor or affection or ill will, and without regard to status, sex, race, relation, political belief, or aspiration. All citizens will be treated equally with courtesy, consideration, and dignity. Do you swear to perform these duties?
I do.
All right. Signature right there. Jesse, it's your turn. Also, the highlight of receiving the badge is when we have the ability to do the official pinning. So Aaron's graciously allowed Jesse to do it. Everything's good, right, with this pin?
Yeah.
So just take it nice and easy. But we allow the family to be part of this because of the significance of receiving this badge. So I'm going to ask Jesse to do the honors for us. Welcome to the family.
Thank you.
I'll let you say a few words to our commissioners and staff.
I just want to appreciate this opportunity to be a part of this city, and I'm extremely excited and happy to be here and serve the community. And I don't know if I should correct the chief, but I have a daughter and a son, Ellie and Branson. So
say it backwards.
Nothing against you.
You should correct me. I will take that.
So thank you.
Well, welcome. Commissioners, comments?
I just want you to know that I have a little black Jeep Compass, and if you see me running by, just wave.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I had had there's a few things that Chief Long talked about. I've had a chance to meet Aaron and spend a little time with him on a few occasions now since he's joined us. And there's three things that jumped out to me. One is welcome to a community. We talk about dignity and respect. This is a community that does respect its officers and does have that sense of dignity for you in the work that you have to do. The second is, you know, when Chief Long talks about the noblest of professions, it's a profession where a lot are running away from it nowadays because of the public perception in some communities. That's not the story here in Walker. So, and then the third one, and I had a chance to meet Grandma and Grandpa. It's been a couple of months, but if you've ever seen grandparents just walk on air talking about their grandson, that was an example of it. So it was pretty neat to see and hear that. So welcome to the family. That's also very important to all of us up here as well, that you're a part of, feel like you're a part of that as well. So if you wouldn't mind, Aaron, take the little victory lap around up here. We all shake your hand real quick. So. Thank you for attending. Appreciate it. You're welcome to stay. We have some riveting material we're covering here this evening. So,
Frank.
All right. We'll jump over then. Reports from the city manager.
Yep, as we talked in the committee of the whole meeting, recommending that Gary Postma be appointed as approved as the DPW director, beginning on Friday, right, Mark? So we'd look for a motion to that effect, please.
I'll make that motion.
I'll support.
We have a motion from Commissioner DeShane, support from Commissioner Holland. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Congratulations, Gary. Well done.
You need him to make the walk of shame?
Yeah. Now, yeah, we're going to. Come on. We're going to make you make the walk of shame up there. Come on. Sure, why not? Come on up, Gary.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, Mark, we're not done with you yet. We'll get you on Thursday. All right. Okay, so next on our list, consent agenda.
Hey, Gary?
Yes.
Can we, that other item on 3 Mile Remembrance, continue that under city manager?
Yes, you want to continue on with that
Yeah,
then?
good.
I think the last comments with that is there has been a fair amount of feedback. It's not just the social media presence, but it's catching one of our former commissioners who lives at that intersection, seeing him out and about or taking a phone call from him. It's interesting. It's something, when we talk about the road diet piece, there's been some very, I think, insightful comments around when we've done this in other spots. It's made sense. Initially that trepidation of, boy, it's going to make things slower and what have you. It's something I immediately thought about when we were going to do that. But when you think we've done this before, it's made sense. And we're in that same general area there, so we have the same, pretty close to the same traffic impact as well. For me, it makes total sense. To me, it shows the residents at that intersection that have voiced their opinions for quite some time now, especially with a couple of fatalities that we've had in the last year that really does address the voices that wanted to be heard. So I'm definitely in favor of it. It sounds like we had fairly unanimous consent up here with that, so I'm not sure if there's Want us to take a motion with it at this point then?
I would prefer a motion, that way we can hand the minutes to MDOT and say City Commission has supported this concept. And that way we have a good record of decision-making.
So I think that on that motion that Commissioner Holland's about to make, I think we just want to make sure that we're making a motion in support of the concept that's been presented to us and to take the next steps from there with MDOT.
Right, I'll make that motion.
I'll support.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Holland, support from Commissioner DeShane. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passed. All right. That covers the city manager's reports. There we go. All right. And then on the consent agenda, we can make one motion with no discussion unless there's any questions on the bills or the Walker Avenue Bridge removal project, and we'll take a pause there to make sure everybody's comfortable with everything as it's presented. See a lot of head nods. Good. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the 3 items on the consent agenda.
Make motion?
Support?
So we have a motion from Commissioner Gilbert, support from Commissioner Gruters. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passed. And now we are on ordinance 19-510. This is the first reading of the RPUD-2 rezoning preliminary site plan review for the proposed 4-mile apartments at 1146 4 Mile Road Northwest. City managers or Dan, do we want to turn this over for, or do you want to invite the applicant up for a little background first?
Yeah, maybe
Okay.
the applicant is here, and maybe have Mr. Visser talk about his project, and then we can get into the details of a vote, you know, how about the procedure of, with the petition hanging out there.
Okay. All right, Mr. Visser, Steve, if you'd, either one of you, Brandon? Yep. Just, there you go.
I'm Brandon Visser, Steve's son, and I've been working with him on this project with staff ever since the beginning. So I've kind of tried to make sure I was the most educated on all the details at all times. So if you guys have questions, or you want me to give kind of like a little background story first?
Yeah, maybe a little, if you could, kind of why we're going from a previous rezoning to the PUD. What's changed? What didn't take place? Why the change? How you're approaching this, and really what you need from us at this point.
Okay. Yeah, so it was zoned ORP for office, which was kind of the intended purpose. Over the last 5 to 10 years, we've kind of seen a change in that area. Office on 4 Mile Road between this property and Alpine, there's kind of constantly a transitioning of in and out, circulating door with businesses and offices and vacancy in office buildings. There's a need, and staff kind of discussed it with us in the beginning, for rentable housing in this area. And we kind of thought this was a good location for some nicer, smaller scale, not high density, but just something more personable for the area, residential based. We're home builders and developers, so we've done condo projects and house projects, and all of our plans and building materials and processes are going to be alike to residential construction. So it's going to have all the kind of appearances of a residential building, but it's going to accommodate that medium density niche in the market of need. And that's kind of where we went from office to the current. And staff kind of guided us as far as how to go about that. And their recommendation was to go along with the MPUD, which is in alliance with the City of Walker's master plan of medium density.
Okay. All right, commissioners, any questions for Mr. Visser? All right. Any questions? And actually, I do have, Brandon, I have one. On the, I think we're dealing with 1.6 acres roughly. When you look at that kind of that retention pond area through the drainage area down there, does that impact that 1.6?
I'm sorry, can you
So you've
rephrase
got
question?
where it starts the grading limits, that undisturbed area, it's about half an acre. So is that 1.6 exclusive of that, really that non-buildable area, if you will?
It is, I think it
Okay.
includes that in the total.
didn't
I
think
don't know
that's-
what the actual calculation for that area is. It's kind of a interesting shaped lot on that flag kind of setup, but as far as detention goes, we've been working hand in hand with our engineer, Randy Feenstra, for kind of assessing the site for drainage and creating some sustainable ways to handle water, runoff, snow, all the things that would, affect the site by going forward with the project. So it's kind of a depressed drainage ditch right now going off of that intersection at 4 Mile and Cordis. And what we have kind of proposed is actually to kind of improve that and trim some of the overgrowth out and restructure that a little bit so it's sustainable for, more years to come. As of right now, it's kind of a eroding ditch basin right now that kind of trickles down into wetlands.
Okay. Commissioner Gilbert, if I could impose upon you a little bit from the commissioner's perspective. The Planning Commission, there was the approval, but it was conditional.
Right.
Could you give us maybe a little additional background on this from that perspective?
Yeah, we had a pretty good discussion about this project at the Planning Commission level, and I do recall some residents showed up and did voice some of the concerns that were hit on in the petition. I think our feeling generally was that we have master planned this site to be medium density residential. And with that in mind and thinking of the overarching context, I think if you look at just the sites that are immediately surrounding, the initial reaction might be to be a little bit hesitant towards this use. But if you look at the overarching framework, you're looking at, you've got Alpine Avenue and then you've got the Orchard Apartments. From there, you've got a couple of houses sprinkled in, but then, that zone is intended to be for the city medium density residential. So that kind of was the centerpiece for us in moving that direction. I think that, when you think about the zones that we're kind of putting together there, you've got your commercial, you've got your high density residential, then you put in your medium density residential, you transition to condos, and then the uses get, lighter as you taper off from that more high density area, more intense use. I think some of the concerns on traffic generation and stuff are kind of tough for me to validate, being that, 4 Mile is a primary county road. The volumes on there are already really high. I understand that the outlet is pretty close to that intersection at Cordis, and we have pretty big plans for that intersection, but I think it's tough to, that's probably the best access for the site no matter what you put there. And this use is probably not any more intensive than an office would be, as far as what you consider for trip generation. So for us at the Planning Commission level, that's more technical review. We felt very comfortable moving forward. The parking was one thing that needed to be addressed. You had some parking facing houses, some facing across the street. We wanted that addressed, and the developers have done a good job of finding a solution to that and meeting their parking requirements. I think that all in all, the developers have done a really good job with the site, and it sort of meets the intent that I perceive through our master plan.
Good, thank you. Commissioners, any question? And I think I want to come back to Dan Power had shared earlier some of the signatures and the petition that's come in there. And one of the things that when we look at is we apply some design process thinking here is to have some empathy and walk in the shoes of those in that immediate area. We hear the context from the developer. So maybe my ask from the commission is for any dialogue around this. We have I think a good healthy amount of signatures at this point from an immediate area there that we do have to take into consideration because we do represent them. And with that in mind, what thoughts does the commission have from what you've heard, what you've been able to see in your packets around the impact this would have on the neighbors around there?
So I went through the petition. You know, a lot of the concerns, and I went through item by item and kind of went through my take on those issues that they addressed. I think there's a ton of validity for the one household with the overlooking and the privacy thing, because, you know, I don't think that if I'm in his shoes, I would want an apartment building overlooking my home. I think that one makes a lot of sense. The rest of them, I think there were a lot of holes in the way that they were posed to us. I think I especially didn't like the neighborhood safety potential crime item. I thought that was pretty, I didn't like that being on there, and that kind of has an implication that if you have apartments near you, those people are going to be criminals.
Sure.
But a lot of these, I don't think quite fit the site at large. You know, the context of this being on 4 Mile, they talked a lot about neighborhood feel and streetscape, things like that, things that I don't think apply on this site. Traffic, you know, just a lot of issues I thought were pretty thin arguments for preventing that. And I wish we had some neighbors here. I would love to have some more thorough discussion on that. But, you know, from where I'm at, going through line by line, I didn't see a lot of those items that would deter me from moving this forward.
Okay.
So if these would have been made, or if these would be condos rather than apartments, the residents probably wouldn't have had a problem with it.
That's not the impression the petition gave me.
Okay.
That wasn't one of the arguments that were stated there, but that could be true.
But I think it reminds me a lot of the pre-concept that we talked about on Cummings, that didn't come to fruition, but
Right.
people are concerned when they hear the word rentable, because it seems like there's going to be multiple turnaround, and it's going to be people who don't have a vested interest in owning the home or the building. That, to me, is, as a resident, I think that's what kind of off-settles some of them. That was just kind of my comment, that a lot of times because of the word apartment, people get a little bit uncomfortable with thinking that here we own our home, we vested money in our home, and these people who are going to be living there are renters. So some of it might just be the pre-concept of that, but.
But again, to that, I would say that you're not far off from where the orchard is. You know, it's really the context of that is, I would be hard pressed to have the argument that, you know, not wanting renters near me would be a good reason for us to not approve this.
And I also understand that, you know, that is a high traffic area regardless of whether you have an office building there or whether you have apartments there. And as I know the Visser brothers to be, they always build very quality, high-end buildings or homes. I think that sometimes Walker is having a difficult time realizing that with our next generation, there are people who do not want to be homeowners, and they want to be they want to be quality within their profession, but they don't want to necessarily invest and own and have that responsibility. They want to be more young professionals.
No, I definitely agree with that. And if anyone has objections to this, I definitely want to hear it and have some more discussion on it. But I'm just sort of giving you guys the framework for where I'm standing after my review of everything.
What is the price point? Have you thought about what your price point is?
It's still subject to change, obviously, because this is awfully preliminary for renting. But in a comparison with some of the surrounding rentable properties, I think that lowest units would probably be in the lower level because they are limited to 1 bathroom as opposed to 2. And then the main floor units and the upper units are 2 bath, 2 bedroom. So I would suspect the lower level units to be somewhere around 1,200 and the main and uppers to be exceeding that, upwards of 14 a month. And as far as how we're going to structure utility, how the apartments are rented, it'll be run through management. We have full intentions at this point of owning the buildings and not selling them. We're from Walker. It's kind of, especially this corridor, we've kind of grown up in, my dad included. It's a property that we've kind of had expectations to keep within the family, but this is seeming to be something that could improve the area, not be a detriment.
So when I was looking over all the information, as the mayor mentioned, it came to mind that I felt like we were looking at the checks on a list of technicalities and maybe not hearing the voices of the residents in that area. I'm glad that they submitted their petition so that we could get that on record. My concern is that I feel like this particular development is really pushing the limits of medium density. And so I wonder, I would like to see, I know there's been a lot of recommendations or conditions on the preliminary, the PASP. And for my part, I would like to see what those changes look like. And what maybe some of those new considerations are, especially in light of keeping some of the aesthetic. I wonder what the environmental impact will be on those wetlands. I know that there needs to be a study done, I believe, for that prior to the FASP. But again, with pushing to the very limit of what is medium density in that area, you're really pushing limits of everything that goes with it. And I wonder if people would be more willing to accept that area if maybe there were fewer residents, maybe if it were townhomes or something that looked a little bit more like residential homes that could still be rented. You would still have multiple, units there. It would still be an area where young professionals would be drawn to that sort of thing, if that's what you're looking for. So,
if I may, so one of the kind of biggest obstacles around this site is it's always best to follow the topography of the land when it comes to construction and design. And this site is set up with a very abrupt walkout style as far as the drop off goes. So irregardless of number of units, it would have to be a full basement ideally. And as far as rental, this style building goes, we could not formulate a way to justify and sustain the whole project while having full empty basements if those weren't rented. Or if we just took and put basement units that are less desirable, it was unsustainable as well. So we've kind of run through some of the, early on options as far as costing and making this project work. So we're not trying to overstep by going to that threshold of the medium density, but I just want to also note we're not exceeding it. It's within the realm, and I think that the limit for 8 units per acre was put in place as a comfortable number, and if it wasn't, it should have been reduced further, and that's kind of where we kind of found our sweet spot. As also with the construction, it's 6 and 6. So the way that they're built is very similar to that of a 2-story home. So as far as building heights, privacy, issues with seeing the number of volume of units, it's just going to appear to be a typical 2-story building because there's no windows for the lower level for the road facing side. And as far as building overall height goes, we'll actually be shorter than every 2-story that we have built previous to this, seeing as these are 8-foot main floor walls with an 8-foot ceiling in the second floor as well. And most typical houses are 9 foot on the main floor with steeper roof pitches. And this is a very subtle roof pitch, 8-foot main floor, 8-foot upper floor. So as far as comparing it to if we were to take this project and just build a 2-story single-family residence, it would actually probably have less of an impact height-wise to the surrounding neighbors. Also with windows, we have no side windows on these units. There's no there's going to be no overviewing of backyards except for what is directly rear of the building. And that's just a bedroom and a family room, and the family room's in the center. So it's designed in a way that tries to kind of meet the needs of some of those obstacles as best we can. But we've also taken a lot of the aspects from the staff commission or planning commission and made some of those site changes. Most of it was due to site changes and making sure headlights and parking and street lights and things like that were as least intrusive as possible. And that's what we've spent a lot of our time on design-wise in the last 2 weeks.
All right, thanks.
Well, excuse me. I know you've done your homework. You've got quality buildings that are out there, or not buildings, but residential housing. You have quality properties. The price point, I think these are just 1 and 2 bedroom units, right?
They're all 2.
They're all 2 bedrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the price point I think is great. I also think that, I really don't think that you're pushing that medium density like the commissioner said, but I think you're within that line. So actually, I'm in favor of this unit.
Thank you.
I will say one thing on the environmental piece. I just think that one thing to consider is that I don't think that this development will be any worse for that area than any other development would be. That's just something to consider. Yep. I should say, I'm objective. I'm just saying that this is the way that I.
And through the FASP, we'll be going through all of the correct due diligence with the city and the environmentalists we work hand in hand with all the time. It's not like we're trying to go around any obstacle or any loophole. Everything's going to be done correctly and procedurally.
You do that with all of your properties, so I have no doubt that that's what's
There's a lot of good
happening
reason
here.
to.
All right, just a couple, Brandon, for me, a couple of quick things. The overlooking the loss of privacy, there's the one particular resident that's more so impacted, I think, than anybody else. Do you foresee with any other adjustments that you would make, and I don't know that there's a right answer here, it's more for information for me, is there any opportunity to get, to help alleviate some of his concerns, which are valid, maybe to mitigate that even further than what you're trying right now?
Some of the steps we've taken thus far, post-planning commission, was we actually moved the building back just a little bit, and we found some space that we were able to reobtain and keep the building as back as far as possible without letting it fall down the hill of the topography. So as far as moving it back, that's been done to the measure that we can. The windows and design of the buildings are geared towards keeping some separation, and we've never opposed landscaping options for between the houses. As far as, final area site plan, I'm not sure if that's kind of when we'll jump through some of those questions with everybody, but we've kind of been on board with trying to make everybody's opinions matter and count, and trying to kind of have a meeting of the minds the whole way through with staff, the planning commission, and we're more than open to making sure that every measure's been considered.
When I look at the reasons, I'm looking at the petition, and when I look at the reasons listed, I think to Commissioner Gilbert's point, anything really that goes there, has some type of impact. And one of the things when you look at the, I think the neighborhood safety, the potential for increased crime, anytime we're adding bodies in a dense area there, the likelihood of that, that's going to happen. So that potential's there, but I personally like so far I know we've got some steps to go yet, and it feels like we're dragging you through the glass right now, but we want to make sure that we're representing those that have done the petition, those that have not yet, and making sure that their concerns are being addressed. But, you know, the drawings of this, the adjustments you've made, I'd commend you. You've listened. I think they're nice-looking buildings, actually. I mean, they really do, for me, are aesthetically pleasing for that frontage there. So I'm definitely inclined, knowing you've got some steps to go through yet with our staff, but I'm inclined to be in favor of supporting this as well. So I guess with that in mind, this is the first reading of the RPUD-2 rezoning preliminary site plan review for the 4 Mile Apartments at 1146 4 Mile Road Northwest. At this point, I'm willing to entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make that motion.
We have support.
I'll support.
So we have a motion for Commissioner Holland, support from Commissioner Gruters. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you continuing to make the tweaks and adjustments, Brandon, so thank you.
Thank you all.
Yep. All right, at this point, we'll open up for other public comment. I see 2 of our youth commission in the back of the room struggling. Are you staying awake or are you doing good? You're doing good back there? All right. Good. So they came early. I was able to spend a little time with them tonight too. So good to see what the future looks like for us. I'll open up at this point. We'll start to our right with our city clerk and kind of go right to left. Commissioner and city manager comments.
I'm good.
I just wanted to mention I was in the traffic committee meeting this week, and in addition to talking about the, what we talked about with Frank here earlier, the 3 Mile, adjustments to 3 Mile, I'm happy to report that we are looking at a safety grant that will help get Richmond into shape so that it can be considered by MDOT as a place where they might do some additional work, but we need to do some work on Richmond Avenue first, so we're going to get those ducks in line this year, hopefully. Hopefully that'll go through. And then some other traffic issues just around the schools there on Leonard, where we just recently did the redevelopment, pulling those the school safety zones in line so that there's a little bit more continuity in the speeds and the lighting that goes in there. So.
Good, thank you. Commissioner Gruters.
I just would want to say a huge thank you to the DPW for the last couple weeks of work. It's unprecedented, and you can't begin to say how grateful that we are for all the hard work that they have obviously done. Many, many hours and huge commitment.
Agreed. Good, thank you. Commissioner Holland?
I agree with Commissioner Gruters, and there's more to come. Actually, I have nothing else. Thanks.
I will say ditto to that. I think that the city of Walker did a great job with all of Mother Nature's outbursts this past week. Just whether it be trees that fell or whether it be snow, they did a wonderful job managing it.
Great, thank you. City managers, Mr. Walsh.
Wednesday night, 6:30, weather permitting. Master plan visioning session here. It'll be Housie Levine, our consultants, running that. So we'll hand it over to them for the evening and do some master planning. So you're all invited. That's it. And also, police, fire, DPW, excellent job pulling things together over the last few days with the ice storm.
Thank you. Daryl?
Yep, couple things. Mayor had already mentioned Mark's retirement coffee Thursday at 2 o'clock here in the City Commission chambers. If you're available and can make it, that'd be great. I had circulated a note or a card that we received from Mayor Buck's family. We had sent some flowers over to his funeral, so that was their thank you card there, so if you've had a chance to look at that. We also received a thank you from the Right Place today. As you know, they serve as our economic development arm for the region. We donate to them. We're a partner, one of their partners, and we allocate $5,000 a year to help fund what they do for us, which pays off exponentially for us. So they just received a letter today from Birgit Close, who's their executive director, thanking us again for our thoughtful donation this year, which is awesome. And again, just can't thank the departments enough for what they were able to do. We got an awesome staff here, as you all well know, and not only DPW, fire, but everybody in the office, and especially the IT. I want a special shout out for Julie Block. She was here all weekend trying to get us up and running. We had issues with servers and everything else, and, fire being down. We had some dispatch issues, but everybody worked together, pulled together. We had, Station 3 as a warming center for a couple of days. That's been phased out obviously by now, but did an awesome job. We did a little bit of a debrief this morning with the departments and a couple lessons learned on things that we would want to do differently probably, and some of the communications that we've had, but work in progress. We shined brightly, I'd say, on our staff, and especially with the county. So kind of leads into what Gary, I think, had mentioned a couple weeks ago about doing another tabletop exercise, and we talked about that this morning, and we may use this event as kind of the event to model and what can work out better next time for us. But yeah, great shout out to our entire staff for the last 2 weeks. So hopefully this snow coming the next day or two is nothing, but the guys DPW will be out picking up some brush over the next week or two when they're not plowing. Along the roadside, so those in the right-of-way, if there's brush, if you get calls or comments from your residents, we're not going on to private property, or we're not hauling stuff off, but if there's stuff at the roadway and the right-of-way, they'll get to it as they can, as time permits, when they're not plowing. So should be on Facebook and our web page also. So that's all I have. Gary, you're going to mention about the strategic planning?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I'll open with that one. So we made a decision, and it was interesting. I'll come back to the whole event that just took place this last week. But Darryl, Frank, and I were communicating. One of us was under 15 feet of snow up north. One of us was under 15 feet of sand. Frank's kind of stuck in the middle, but we were having a lot of communication Thursday, Friday, Saturday of staying on top. So I want to thank the two of them, because I felt like I knew what on earth was going on and what the updates were, and that's very appreciated. But we made a decision. We were talking about, at this point, we did not know when the rest of the city would have power on. So on Friday, we made a judgment call collectively that we felt our priorities would be better spent today, really, and into this week with the not just finishing the one storm, but the other ones coming as well in preparation for that. So it is September 4th at 4 o'clock. I'm sorry. Thanks. Sorry. I can't read I don't have my reading glasses on. I'm busted. So March 4th at 4 o'clock, we will need to reschedule that ordinance meeting at 5 o'clock, and we can take that one offline and get that squared. But we could possibly even do that at 6:30 that night when you're the chair. I'll let you make that decision. So March 4th at 4 o'clock. I'm really excited. We put a fair amount of work into this and had some healthy dialogue amongst us and with the department heads. So I'm looking forward to a very impactful time spent together then. The second is Commissioner Glanville just modeled a behavior that I want to give a shout out to, but I want to emphasize it's something that it's kind of my in my DNA a little bit, and maybe my ask of the commissioners. We all sit on different committees, and there's some bigger ones and there's some smaller ones, and they're all important to a degree, and sometimes there's topics that would be of interest to the rest of the commission, but we're not always at all of these meetings. So her and I were talking the other day, and one of the things I had mentioned was this desire I have for those committee appointments and assignments that you have, not just those, but the MML events, the conferences or seminars we go to, that as commissioners, I feel like we have this obligation to inform the rest of us and let us each other. I can't be in every meeting. I want to know what's going on. I know Commissioner Holland, same thing, Commissioner DeShane. So maybe my ask on a go forward, that's one of those operating rhythms that we get into where we're sharing those meetings. Maybe it's something that takes place at historical or ZBA or what have you, but sharing something. If I was another commissioner that was not in that meeting, would I want to know what took place? You brought up Richmond, perfect example. So thank you for modeling that behavior. It's something that's been on my list to want to share with the group. Last thing I'll have, I know that we are giving a tremendous amount of love to all of our departments, but wow, I mean, I being out of the country, I felt like I was actually here. Because first call Friday morning came at I think we were all talking at 4:30, 4:45 in the morning. It's pretty early. And, but that comes with the role. And the amount of response, the type of response we had, we have a phenomenal community. And I'd be remiss if I did not give a shout out to Consumers Energy. I think it's important to recognize them because at one point when the backup server here went down, we knew we were in a little bit of, backup generator server. So that started the domino thing. We're reaching out to consumers, and I'm going back and forth with our community affairs person to help us out a little bit and get some light shined. They said, we have to get City Hall up and going so we're not running blind up here from a public safety perspective. And lo and behold, from the first time I brought it to her attention, she was texting back within an hour saying that they're on their way up that way right now. And I think within about two and a half hours, they had City Hall up and going. Frank had let us know. So again, just from a coordination of efforts, we look at three things when we go through something like this. What worked? And we had a lot of dialogue around that. What didn't work? We drug ourselves through the glass throughout the day and through the weekend. And then what can we do to get better at this? And what support or investments does this commission need to make and help support the departments with to make sure that we're prepared for these going forward? So a lot of healthy dialogue. But my one word response is wow. It was not a fun thing to go through. And that being said, it was great to see the departments respond to levels they did. So just hats off to all of them again. And we may be going through a little bit of again this week. So I believe we're in a pretty good shape to address those. So that being said, anything else for the good and order from the group? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion.
We have a motion from Commissioner Gilbert.
Support.
Support from Commissioner Gruters. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Meeting closed. Thank you.